it's very evident with her, the recorded testimony, like she just went through documents and procedures diligently. This woman is incredibly diligent in her work. She crosses every T, dots every I, and I would wholeheartedly seek her out if anything, God forbid, would happen to one of my 3 kids.
Robert Kraychik with Rebel News here in Ottawa, Ontario.
At the conclusion of the first week of the disciplinary hearing / tribunal against Constable Helen Grus, who is being charged by the Ottawa Police Service, her employer, with discreditable misconduct grounded in her inquiries, her investigation of a possible linkage or connection between a trend that she observed in which infant deaths in Ottawa, captured and investigated by the Ottawa Police Service, were rising after the rollout of the so-called COVID-19 vaccines. Specifically, she is being accused of inappropriately using the police database services known as RMS, Records Management System, and not taking notes in a conversation with a father of one of the decedent infants in which she was inquiring about the so-called vaccination status of the mother, and also more broadly of insubordination. This matters in terms of it being representative, illustrative of a broader campaign to suppress, to attack, to undermine, to professionally destroy anyone who may undermine the orthodoxies of safe and effective.
During a lunch break adjournment, I'll share with you all 2 major takeaways thus far that I've observed and made during this hearing. Number 1, Superintendent Chris Renwick, who is the de facto judge in this tribunal, his official title is hearing officer, has repeatedly prohibited the defense counsel's request to introduce evidence regarding what they say is the Ottawa Police Service's digital surveillance and interception of Helen Grus's communications via her work phone. Renwick says that such evidence is, quote, inflammatory, and that such evidence would potentially bring the OPS into disrepute. He also agreed with the prosecution's claim that any such evidence could compromise ongoing criminal investigations being conducted by the OPS and undermine, let's call them, sources and methods. In other words, compromise the OPS's law enforcement operations. Number 2, Renwick is very reluctant to allow any sort of information, evidence, or questions regarding safety and efficacy of the so-called COVID-19 vaccines, these mRNA injections. The defense counsel wants to maintain that there was reason to believe, reasonable grounds, there was a smart basis on the part of Helen Grus, their client, to investigate any sort of relationship between these mRNA injections and infant deaths based on medical data, including documents from Pfizer. Renwick himself is very reluctant to allow that and has said basically he does not want to allow this tribunal to be made into a, quote, venue or platform for such analyses. One more takeaway I want to share with you all in the Rebel News audience is from Tuesday, which was the second day of this disciplinary hearing / tribunal, in which Sergeant Marc-Andre Guy, who was Constable Helen Grus's direct supervisor in the SACA unit, said during his testimony that he saw no potential criminality in the context of potential links between these so-called vaccines, these mRNA injections, and infant deaths, despite the fact that these injections were being mandated across the board by all levels of government, different sorts of large institutions like corporations and so forth, and of course, medical establishment proposals and recommendations and guidelines imposed onto physicians to then be furthered onto patients. The defense counsel argued that there was reason to believe that there may be criminality behind this entire apparatus, which led to the creation of reasonable grounds, let's say, a reasonable basis upon which Grus could investigate and do her inquiry into this potential linkage between these mRNA injections and infant deaths.
Okay, so I'm here with Stephanie let's call you a concerned citizen.
Yes.
And you shared some remarks with me earlier about how you had a particular view of Constable Helen Grus, given you being a mother. And I would just love for you to relay those remarks to the Rebel News audience. Would you do that?
Definitely. I, as a mom, now I don't understand all the technical and the law enforcement procedures, but I have been following this. I'm on day 2. And if there were anything to ever happen to any of my 3 children, I would seek constable or detective. Constable.
Or detective.
Detective Grus out. I would specifically ask for her. She leaves no stone unturned. It's very evident with her, the recorded testimony, like she just went through documents and procedures diligently. This woman is incredibly diligent in her work. She crosses every T, dots every I, and I would wholeheartedly seek her out if anything, God forbid, would happen to one of my 3 kids.
Dear Rebel News audience, if you enjoy and appreciate our in the field reports, please consider contributing to our operations. We can't work for free. The OPS opted against offering any sort of live broadcast or live stream of this tribunal, of this disciplinary hearing, despite the public interest and newsworthiness of these ongoing events. Meanwhile, they've done them in the past for previous hearings. Please go to rebelfieldreports.com and chip in if you can. Again, rebelfieldreports.com.